Yes, we would shoot down the planes of Russian pilots if, in fact, they were stupid enough to think that this president was the same feckless weakling that the president we have in the Oval Office is right now.
I think if you're in favor of World War III, you have your candidate. You know, here's the thing. My goodness, what we want in a leader is someone with judgment, not someone who is so reckless as to stand on the stage and say, yes, I'm jumping up and down. I'm going to shoot down Russian planes. I mean, I think when we think about the judgment of someone who might want World War III, we might think about someone who might shut down a bridge because they don't like their friends. They don't want to, they want to get a Democrat.
How did you score that moment from last night? Let's ask the senator who delivered that line, Rand Paul, my guest now from Las Vegas. And Senator, a good early morning to you, and thank you again for your time here on America's Newsroom.
Thanks, Bill.
Let's get to the substance in a moment, but first, you tried to move the conversation repeatedly last night. How did you think it went for you?
You know, I think it was one of the most substantive debates we've had over foreign policy. We really talked about whether or not regime change is a good idea. You know, for the history of the last several decades in the Middle East, we have been involved with toppling secular dictators, and my point for years now has been that it leads to chaos, the rise of radical Islam, and makes us less safe, and so that we had to reconsider regime change. And this is a big point of contention between myself and Hillary Clinton, but also between myself and Marco Rubio, because they both believe that regime change will make us safer, and I think the opposite is true.
Continue that line of questioning then. Assad stays in power, right? Russia's got an ally. Iran, more critically, has an ally. The refugees continue to pour into Europe and eventually, in turn, here in the United States. You, as president, how do you change that, Senator?
You know, part of the reason there's so many refugees pouring out of Syria, though, is because the civil war there has been stoked on both sides. Iran has helped Assad, but ourselves, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, have helped the Islamic rebels. And frankly, I've warned against giving weapons to the allies of al-Qaeda or the allies of ISIS. None of these people in that Syrian civil war like us on either side of the war. And sometimes we just need to acknowledge that there are variations of evil in civil wars, maybe on both sides, but it doesn't behoove American interest to topple Assad. Had we toppled Assad 2 years ago, like President Obama wanted, like Clinton wanted, like Rubio wanted, if we had done that, ISIS would be in charge of all of Syria now. So I think it was a great debate over whether regime change works and whether it's advisable.
Let me come back to the comment we just played for our viewers. Why mention Bridgegate with Chris Christie?
I think it goes to judgment. You know, he picked these advisors. Their offices were just down the hall from him, and it stretches credulity to think he knew nothing about the bridge. But even if he didn't know anything about shutting down the bridge, how petty and how just amazing to shut down an entire bridge for hours out of spite, out of people you don't like, to punish some mayor. So I think, yeah, it goes to judgment. If he didn't know anything about it, it goes to judgment and picking the individuals. But I think it stretches credulity that his office was next door to all these people that he had known for years and that he knew nothing about closing the bridge down. And you know there has been an investigation. If you're willing to close a bridge down, it goes to judgment.
You know there's been an investigation on that. He did not take the bait you put in front of him. He clearly moved on to another topic. In your opening statement last night, you mentioned Marco Rubio by name. You referred to Donald Trump in so many words, but not mentioning his name. And it seemed like they were not buying into, you could argue it was a trap or just a comment. They weren't taking the bait. Why not, Senator?
Well, you know, I think my point came across pretty well, because the point I made about Donald Trump is that if you're going to close the internet, that's something like they do in North Korea. That's something like they do in China. But it also goes against the Constitution. It goes against the First Amendment. So people might think it's humorous at first when they hear that Donald Trump's strong and he's going to close the internet down from terrorists. But closing the internet would require a change to our Constitution where we get rid of the First Amendment. That's a big step, and people who think Donald Trump might be fit for president ought to consider that he really doesn't have a lot of respect for the Constitution or for the First Amendment.
You know, final question here, you know you've got some work to do in Iowa and some work to do in New Hampshire and some work to do in South Carolina. Do you think last night moved the meter for you at all?
You know, we'll see. The polls are very fluid. You know, Ben Carson, who I like a lot, has dropped 20 points in the polls in the last couple weeks. Same thing could happen to Trump. When people wake up, you know, he's talking about killing women and children, the families of terrorists. Well, I want to do everything against terrorists. I mean, I don't think many Americans really want to kill 2-year-old children or 4-year-old children. So I think really people have to think through what his proposals are. And I think the polls are fluid enough that Donald Trump could drop right out and that there could be new leaders within the next few weeks.
Oh, you know what he said just last week? I will never leave this race. That's what he said. Do you believe it?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Famous last words.
Senator, thank you for your time. We'll see you again soon. Rand Paul there in Las Vegas.
Thank you.
Thank you.